reasons to say goodbye. Some are good and some are bittersweet. One of the saddest places to say goodbye is a funeral. Today, Mike will be telling us a story of his farewell to a close friend. Saying goodbye, Mike Kaml. Mike Kaml, saying goodbye.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most honored guests. It was a beautiful funeral. The church was packed. Many beautiful words were said. Many wonderful stories were told. But before we say goodbye, we have to say hello. Bob Armstrong is a person that I literally knew my entire life. I was first aware of him at the age of 5 or 6, when there was this wonderful man that would help out with the youngsters. Help to keep us as calm as possible in church. And just generally be a person that you could look up to. As I grew older, I got to know Bob a lot better. And Bob became one of my mentors. Now, Bob, I would say, is an inveigler. Absolutely. Because he would ensure that you had to think. You would get the correct answer, but it wouldn't be handed to you on a silver platter. You had to work for it. How many of you have had someone to whom you could say anything? It's a very rare thing. Bob was that someone for me. As I was growing up, as many children did, I had problems which seemed insurmountable at the time. And I would talk to Bob about them. We would discuss them. I would tell him my deepest, darkest fears, and he would help me understand. Why was I afraid? He would help me to work my way through all of those issues that face every one of us in our lives. As I grew even older, he gave me great advice in sports. I discovered he knew everything about every sport ever played. Okay, maybe not really. But it seemed that way to me. If I came up with some odd, esoteric, obscure sport, he would know that particular sport and be able to tell me something about it. Now, being an inveigler, a lot of it probably was not entirely the truth. But he would make it sound like the truth. When I grew older and was graduating from high school, Bob was one of the people that I talked to about what I was going to do with my life. He was one of the people that encouraged me, since I wasn't entirely certain what I wanted to do, to go into the service. So I joined the Army and spent a couple of years traveling around Europe. Okay, I was stationed in Europe, so I didn't stay in Berlin most of the time. But as a young man, I had the opportunity to go places, to see things that I had only read about. And I always make sure that I wrote to Bob and let him know what I was doing. As a matter of fact, I probably wrote to Bob more than I did Mom and Dad, which got me a little bit of trouble, but that's okay. Bob was one of those rare friends. When I became an adult, when I came back from the service, Bob was still there, but now he was treating me as an equal. And I've got to tell you, it felt good. He was treating me as an adult. As I went through life, I continued to talk to Bob. When I was starting my first business, I got a lot of wonderful advice from him on what I needed to do, how I needed to set this up. I got offers of assistance, which, like an idiot, I turned down. Bob and I continued to talk. Bob was one of my closest friends. I knew he had been having health problems. Then one day, I got a phone call. It was from my pastor. And he said, Bob had a heart attack last night and passed away. Then he said, the family wants you to sing at the funeral. Now, I sing at funerals all the time. A lot of times, a family comes in, they want somebody to sing, so I sing for a stranger. I've also sung at the funerals of people that I knew, but never at the funeral of such a close friend as Bob. I thought about it for a while, and finally said, yeah, okay. The day of the funeral came. The church was packed. There were many wonderful words spoken. I found out a lot of things about Bob that I hadn't known. A lot of it having to do with his sense of humor. I know he had a wry, dry sense of humor, but I didn't know how far he took it with people. We were laughing, we were crying, we were singing, we were praying. The time came for me to do my solo. I walked up to the front of the church, nodded to the piano player. She began to play. And I began to sing. On a hill far away stands an old rugged cross. I sang with all of my heart and with all of my soul. As I sang, I could feel the power of music flowing through me, flowing out to the congregation. When I looked down, I could see his widow sitting there in front of me with tears running down her face. When I was done, I rushed to the back of the church. I rushed outside and I sat down on a bench and I cried for 20 minutes. But I knew I had touched the lives of every single person in that church on that day. That was my gift to Bob. That was how I said goodbye.